All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be back.
So this time we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting called diabetic ketoacidosis,
Yeah.
or DKA.
DKA.
And we've got a really cool medical excerpt here that goes into the nitty-gritty, like the cellular level of what's actually going on.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is. You know, sometimes these medical excerpts, they sound like a foreign language.
Absolutely.
But we're trying to break this one down and make it make sense, see if we can learn something along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
So right off the bat, this excerpt talks about all these biochemical and clinical disturbances that happen in kids with DKA.
Right.
And it's basically saying that their bodies lose control over how they handle like all the energy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Yeah, it's like the whole system goes haywire.
It does. It's like, whoa.
And the key player in all of this is insulin.
Insulin, okay.
Insulin's like the conductor of the orchestra, making sure everything is in sync.
Well, I like that. That's a good analogy, okay.
It helps our bodies use glucose for energy, store energy, and basically keeps everything running smoothly.
So when it's working properly,
Yeah.
insulin is like the boss.
Exactly.
Making sure all the cells are getting what they need, everything's humming along.
Yeah, and this excerpt mentions a figure 1, which unfortunately we can't show everyone listening. Right. But this figure really shows how insulin works, like a master regulator. It stimulates our muscles to take up glucose from the blood.
Oh, okay. So like refueling the muscles.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Okay.
And it does the same thing for the liver and fat cells, so everybody gets their share.
So it's not just about energy right now, it's also about storing energy for later.
You got it. And this is where anabolism comes in.
Anabolism. Okay, hold on. Now we're getting into the big word.
I know, right? But it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay, good.
Anabolism is basically like the construction crew of our metabolism. It's all about building things up, taking those little glucose molecules and turning them into bigger energy stores.
Like building a house out of bricks.
Perfect analogy.
Okay, cool.
And at the same time, insulin is also like the supervisor saying, hey, hold back on the demolition.
Okay.
So it's suppressing catabolism, which is the breaking down of those energy stores.
So it's like a constant push and pull.
Exactly.
Like build up, break down, keep everything in balance.
And insulin is right there in the middle, directing traffic, keeping everything running smoothly.
So, but in DKA, it's like that conductor just walks off the stage.
Pretty much. And suddenly all those musicians are like, what do we do now?
Chaos.
Exactly. And that's where the trouble really starts.
So what happens? Like who takes over if insulin isn't doing its job?
Well, there are these other hormones called counter-regulatory hormones.
Counter-regulatory. Okay, those sound kind of intense.
They are in this situation. See, normally they're helpful.
Okay.
They raise your blood sugar when you need it, like if you haven't eaten in a while.
Makes sense.
But without insulin there to keep them in check, they just go overboard.
Oh, no.
And they end up driving blood sugar through the roof.
So that's why people with DKA have really high blood sugar.
That's a big part of it. But here's the thing. Even though there's all this glucose floating around in the blood, the cells can't use it properly without insulin.
So it's like they're starving even though there's plenty of food.
Exactly. It's like having a full pantry, but no way to open the door.
Wow. Okay, so that's why people with DKA are always hungry and thirsty.
Yep, their bodies are desperate for energy, but they can't access the glucose they need.
So they start looking for an alternative, like some kind of emergency backup power.
Exactly, and that's where the backup generator kicks in. Fat.
Fat. Okay, how does that work?
So even in a normal person who hasn't eaten for a while, insulin levels drop a bit.
Okay.
This signals to the liver to release some stored glucose and start breaking down fat for energy.
Makes sense.
And this process creates ketones, which are like a different kind of fuel that most cells can use.
The ketones are like the backup generator fuel.
Exactly. But in DKA, things are kind of out of control.
Right, so what happens to the ketones?
Well, remember those counter-regulatory hormones? They're still running wild. They're pushing the body to break down fat way too fast, and this floods the bloodstream with ketones.
Uh-oh. Too much of a good thing.
Yeah, you could say that. The problem is ketones are acidic.
Okay.
And too many of them can overwhelm the body's natural pH balancing system.
So that's where the acidosis part of DKA comes in.
Exactly. The blood becomes too acidic, and that's when things get really dangerous.
So we got the high blood sugar, the cells are starving, and now the blood is too acidic.
Right. It's a whole cascade of problems.
And what does that actually feel like for the person going through it?
Well, we talked about the constant hunger and thirst, but it goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
The excess ketones can cause nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, even trouble breathing.
Oh, wow.
And in severe cases, DKA can lead to confusion, seizures, even coma.
That's really scary.
It is a very serious condition. And although this excerpt focuses on children, DKA can happen to anyone with diabetes.
Right, so it's not just a kid thing.
Definitely.
And I guess I'm wondering, besides just not having enough insulin, are there other things that could make someone more likely to develop DKA?
That's a great question to think about. Yeah. Because it's not always as simple as just taking insulin.
Right? There could be other factors at play.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind.
So we learned a lot about DKA today.
We have.
And I think the main takeaway is that it's a really complex condition, but understanding how it works at this deep level, like we've talked about today,
Absolutely.
can really help us take better care of ourselves and our loved ones.
For sure. Knowledge is power.
It really is. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep exploring. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.